So do you believe that the mind is merely an active observer of reality or a participant in the shaping of reality?
My name is Nick Hutchison of Book Thinkers.
Hi, this is Dr. Oz Garcia.
This is John Lee.
My name is Dr. Wendy Suzuki.
Hey, this is Richard Dolan.
This is Jason Pfeiffer.
This is Todd Herman.
My name is Georgia Clare.
This is Nir Ayal.
My name is Chris Bailey.
And this podcast
makes sense. Great morning, world. Great morning, humans. This is your friendly neighborhood dragon with another edition of the Make Sense with Dr. JC podcast. And it's an honor and a privilege to be here. So we're going to talk a little bit about, just becoming open and aware and curious today. And one of those things that I do is I just love to just sit in a place of gratitude. I think we've all had those moments. I guess we could say like we've experienced perfect timing. Maybe that sign that you weren't even looking for, but for whatever reason it caught your attention. You think of someone seconds before they call and you go, that's weird. Sometimes we have deja vu and things like that. Another one would be like you find exactly what you need just when you're about to give up. That's how I met my wife, Mika. I was just about to give up on dating. I was single for about 7 years. If you ever want to hear that whole story, that is in the podcast. It's called the Dream Daughter Story. And then boom, the chances of me meeting my wife are like winning the lotto because she didn't even live near me and all of that stuff. So it could be like a message, a person, a conversation, or maybe a song that comes on or a number. These things show up with such precision and consistency that kind of deep down inside, you get this feeling like something more is happening than just a coincidence. But we usually brush these things off, assuming that they're random. What if they're not random? We're going to play with that idea. We're going to entertain that idea that maybe they're not random. Maybe there's no such thing as coincidences. I drive my daughter to school every day and she's just got a great big fluffy brain. And I just asked her, I said, do you know what a coincidence is? And she says, I think so. She didn't really know what a coincidence. And I just asked her, I said, this is a 16-year-old girl. I said, do you think things just happen by chance or do you think that they have a bigger meaning? And she says, right, she's my daughter. So I think we all kind of like play with that, but we have this tendency of like brushing them off and just getting on with our day and handing the keys of trust over to this like day that's like happening to us. We like to play in this sandbox with the idea that the day's not happening to us. We're talking about you engaging with the day in the sense that you can reshape reality. So what if these things that are happening are actually signals? They're messages. It's like mail. So today I want to explore the possibility that there are no coincidences. We're just going to entertain the alternative perspective that there are no coincidences. We're not challenging anybody's religious beliefs or anything. We're just saying maybe that there are no coincidences and that many of the meaningful moments in your life may actually be invitations and nudges that are trying to move you from living by accident to a place where you're living with awareness and maybe learning that you have a lot more potential. It's based on this idea that perhaps the greatest tragedy in life is not thinking that life has failed you or failed to guide you in life, but that no one ever taught us to really pay attention. But nobody ever told me to daydream, to let my mind wander. Take note of that. In fact, whenever I was daydreaming or wandering, society always said like, hey, get your shit together, get back on track here. So it's no wonder that we brush these things off because we've kind of been trained to not allow ourselves to do that. And I've talked a lot about the fact that we're this species that doesn't allow ourselves to get bored anymore. I think it's important to be bored. I think some of the most creative insights and that place of being open and curious happens most when we're bored. But if you're someone today that is beginning to kind of wake up to the possibility that everything is connected, some of you are like that. And some of you might just be allowing yourself, or some of you might be having an awakening of that right now, and that everything is kind of connected together. Be patient with yourself. That's another thing about it. The moment that you start to like take a left instead of a right, recognize that it takes a lot of time to convince the captain of the oil tanker, that 120,000 ton oil tanker. It takes time to convince that captain to turn around and consider a completely different route than the one that it's been taking and traveling for the duration of its life. If you entertain a different way of looking at things, can you see how you will very, very quickly be rerouted back on course? We always kind of go back to familiar. And perhaps that new route begins with just one dangerous question that you can ask yourself today. What if there are no coincidences? You'd have to be able to entertain that. What if I don't know everything? What if there's more? So if you're in that space right now, you're powerful, man. I just want to give a disclaimer. This is not to say that if you've set your sights on something, a course, that you shouldn't see it through and follow through. But I just think it's healthy. Adam Grant wrote a book called Think Again. And what he's basically saying is it's very healthy to think again. We're taught to not be like indecisive. We're taught to be certain and just stay the course and never quit. And there is some value to that. But are you the kind of person that entertains what else? What if there are no coincidences? Ancient civilizations didn't call those moments that we're talking about coincidences. They actually called them things like omens and signs and messages, or maybe even divine guidance. The Egyptians and the Greeks and the Mayans and the indigenous cultures believed life itself was constantly communicating through patterns and symbols to those open and aware enough to listen. Has anyone noticed that if you go back in time and we start to uncover things like how the pyramids were built and stuff like that, we see that there must have been some sort of technology that might even be more advanced than us in our advanced state. Modern society calls this stuff luck or chance or randomness. Statistical probability is something that we rely on. So I was asking myself, has progress, all this progress that we're so connected to, we're seeking efficiency and speed and all of that stuff, has progress, all this stuff, made us smarter or have made us deaf? Has progress become so progressive that it's trained us to keep our mouths shut? Carl Jung gave this phenomenon that we're talking about a name. He called them synchronicities. So he defined synchronicities as meaningful coincidences without having an apparent causal relationship. So in other words, what Jung was saying is events that appear unrelated on the surface, potentially carry undeniable personal meaning beneath. What a fun way to look at life. If you can't entertain that something has underlying meaning beneath, what does that say about life? It means that you're just watching a movie rather than acknowledging that you're participating in creating that movie. So Jung believed synchronicities often appear during periods of transformation, during times of uncertainty, awakening, and identity shifts, moments when you're becoming fully yourself. That may be, when I came across that, isn't that interesting to chew on right there, what he's saying? What he's saying is, he's asking us to consider, do synchronicities, signs, clues, and this potential guidance system that I'm entertaining here with you today show up more often when we're leaning into the discomfort and inconvenience of life and growth? Sometimes we mistake comfort with direction. So I think it's important to be uncomfortable, the Stoics called it voluntary discomfort. Why? That's where all the magic potentially happens. For anybody that's tried plant medicine, that's not a good time when you're doing something like ayahuasca, but you have these massive breakthroughs on the other side of like really hard times. I like to play with that because I don't know about you, but this idea that life sucks and then you die, it's kind of true. Not in a bad way, but it means that for the most part, I would say life's been tough and full of hard lessons. And I have this tendency of focusing on the good stuff and keeping my eye on the prize in the future and not staying in the present moment. But if it is true, and I think it is, we have to learn how to embrace the suck. We have to learn how to dance in the rain. So this raises an even deeper, if these are messages, if we start entertaining that this stuff is not just random, they're not coincidences, and they're messages, synchronicities, who or what is sending them? Now, I don't know what you guys think about that stuff, but if we are getting messages, who or what is sending them? Where are they coming from? Human beings. If you're getting a message, you could say God, you could say the universe, you could say the divine. When I start to notice these things, I don't just look for the lesson in them. I say, where did that come from? Did it come from somewhere else? Or maybe it was already there. Maybe it's tucked away in your subconscious mind. Maybe we're so focused that there's some sort of powerful entity out there trying to communicate things with us that we're forgetting that maybe we were born with some of these things, playing with the idea of destiny and calling and all of that stuff. I love to get to know myself a little bit more. So some believe synchronicities arrive from your subconscious mind, that your deeper awareness has this ability to notice patterns before your conscious mind catches up. What that means is that there's a whole world of things going on in your brain without you knowing it, happening before your conscious mind, your prefrontal cortex, your CEO, that goes, that's interesting. What this is saying is these things already exist and they're happening before you know it. So what's the value of becoming open and curious and aware? Well, you tap into these things a little bit more, because when you're open and curious and you're not fixed and closed-minded, then you have this ability to look at other things. And we're doing that right now. Do you think that you play a role in shaping reality? Close your eyes and tell me what happens to reality. It's just a thought and a projection, right? But as soon as you open your eyes and you start looking at things, you don't realize that your meaning-making machine is using its software, its program, its code to do all that stuff. So do you believe that the mind is merely an active observer of reality, or a participant in the shaping of reality. So love and appreciate you. Have an amazing day. And I'm going to go be with my family now. Do me a favor, hit subscribe and like the video if you're vibing with this. It helps us reach more people who need to hear this message. Share this with a friend and comment with a topic that you might want to hear in future episodes. I want to make sure that we're talking about things that matter most to you.
Makes sense.